So as you approach this situation, to approach it properly, and the danger is in your attempt to do this, you can be demeaning, or you can be, what's the word I like to say, mothering or scolding, or just patiently enduring. My wife did that to me today, didn't you, babe? Was that last night? What'd you get up to do for me? Oh, that's right. And I asked her to get something for me. I was on the couch, and I'm holding the dog, and I'm digging in her ears, trying to clean out her ears. And I don't want to move her and try to get all situated again. So I asked my wife to get something, and I did it nicely. Did I? Right? But she got up. Yes, dear. She went up, God. Here you are, dear. And it wasn't bad. It really wasn't. But it was known that she was enduring for my sake. And let's go to the next one, Chuck. The method in which you do it. When a wife's criticisms overwhelm a loving husband, he most likely will do the honorable thing, and that's nothing. Most men will do this, right? What's the honorable thing, right? Well, I just didn't want to make it worse, so I just left, right? That's the last thing you should do, right? That is the last thing you should do. When men are overwhelmed, they'll just get away from the thing, right? If you have a lawnmower you cannot fix and it stumped you, it's beyond your skill, you will leave it in the side yard until it sinks into the ground, right? You'll walk by and ignore it. You'll just walk away from it. And that's what men do. They oftentimes destroy things that make them angry. We can't do that to our wives. So what we do is we just walk away, right? Now, and that's a good indicator to a woman, what's happening, right? Why is he just leaving? Why is he just trying to get away from me? Well, there's something happening here, right? There's a respect issue. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a respect issue, right? Many of men have quit very good jobs because they weren't respected on the job site. And it had nothing to do with it being a bad job. It was an excellent job. And there's a man in my mind right now, I know, and it was an excellent, excellent job. And what he had in his future there. But the problem was disrespect, and his boss was a woman. And what's next? So you get away. We went over some of that already. Stonewall, to be quiet, to say nothing, to go off by yourself. When asked why he does this, he will say, I'm trying not to react. Well, what's he trying not to react to? What's causing such a powerful reaction that he's scared of his own reaction? Right? Men, we tend towards violence quite often. And we know this, right? And why would we be tending to get violent with our wives? The woman who we love more than anybody on earth, right? What is happening, right? Men oftentimes will resort to violence by hitting a table or by doing something that is startling and strong reaction, right? We're trying to avoid that. We don't want that to happen. Well, what do you want me to do? Punch my wife? No, I don't want you to punch your wife. No, I don't, all right? Well, so I went off by myself. Well, I don't want you to do that either. That's not the only 2 options, guys. There are other options, right? Right? Kick the dog. No, that's not an option, right? And that's not an option. What's next? And encoding and decoding. So this is where we're in this whole idea of trying to figure out. I call this clinical mode. And I've kind of forgotten about it until I was going through this again. I'm going into clinical mode. A woman generally could walk into my office and sit down and say terrible things to me and about me. And in this time when you're counseling somebody comes in and says, well, you're struggling here at the church. I know you're struggling with a few things. And she says, you know what I'm struggling? I'm struggling with you. And she could say all these rude things about me. But in my mind, when I'm in clinical mode, I'm analyzing what's wrong here. What's wrong with her? What's happening in her heart? What's happening inside of her? What's causing these things to come out? I'm generally going to concede it's a good-willed woman and she's just been a fine church member and these things aren't necessarily true, but there's something happening in her heart and I want to figure out what it is. Now, if I can go into that mode with my wife and I can see that what she is doing is a reaction, then I can think, well, what is she reacting to? You see, and that's something that's what's happening in my mind as I'm encoding and I'm decoding. I'm decoding a message. And I've had people swear at me. I've had people throw things in my office. But what am I doing? I'm decoding what I'm seeing. right? Because I know there's a heart issue behind this. And what's up front here, it can be a smokescreen, it can be a diversion, which is the same thing. It's a reaction, and it's not necessarily a controlled reaction, but it's a reaction to something deep felt. And if I can decode it properly, this is what a lot of people want. This is what a lot of counseling is. Tell me what's wrong with me. Why do I keep doing this? Why can't I stop? Right? This is what's going on. I'm destroying my own marriage and family, and I don't know why. Can you tell me? So what's my job? Decode. This is why you're behaving this way. And whenever there's a bad behavior, there's a misinterpretation. Most misinterpretations, when you dig down, will at the bottom level, is going to come to a misinterpretation of God and circumstances. Jim Binney gave a great example in his book. And his book was of a cow stall that he was told by his father to shovel and clean. And he said it was inside the barn. He went inside the barn and he had to, all the silage and stuff you put down mixed with the manure, you'd shovel it all up, throw it off to the side, put down new hay, new silage, and then the next day you come in and do it over again. Well, he found out that it was easier to just cover the old with the new. And he got away with it for quite some time, as far as he knew, until his head was almost touching the top of the barn, the ceiling. The room was getting shorter and shorter and shorter. Well, yeah, we know what was happening, right? The floor was getting higher. And his father, upon discovering it, said, you go over to that barn and you take it down to the concrete and clean all that off. And he said that silage had been trampled for months by that calf or that cow. And it had gotten hard as concrete. He said he's literally using a pick to break the stuff up to get it off that floor. And he said you literally had to go a layer by layer by layer. And what you're seeing in somebody's reaction is the top layer. And when you remove that layer, you get to another layer. You're not at the cause yet. And when you go below that layer, you're still not at the cause. You can expect layer after layer after layer. What are layers? Layers are behaviors and behavioral actions, right? And as you see a behavior, that is a layer. You're seeing that behavior. Let's say that it's stonewalling, right? Well, take that off. Underneath that, there's something that's happening that's causing that thought process. Then you go beneath that, you'll find something that's underneath there. Like, let's say it's an improper definition, and an improper definition of which means you're not defining properly what the stimuli that's happening to you. Well, I know what my wife is doing this for. She just hates me. Well, no, you got a wrong definition. So you take that layer off, and you get a proper definition. Well, below that, well, why do you think she hates you? With men, it's why do you think? With women, it's what do you feel like when this happens? But even with men, emotions are windows to the soul. So use those emotions to try to get down to layer. And sometimes it takes an hour to get one layer. And then next time you go to the next layer, and the next time to the next layer to find. And so often you'll come down to the basics, the image of God in man, the manner in which God created or deals with man, God's sovereignty. These issues, these basic issues, that's usually the root when you come down to the root. And it's a misconception of God. A.W. Tozer wrote that. He says, all bad thinking ends in a misconception of God. So when you're trying to get through to bad thinking, right, which leads to bad feeling, which leads to bad emotion or behavior. So we're not just trying to change behavior. Of course, we do want to change behavior, but they're not just that. We want to get to the heart behind the behavior. Well, that heart is deep. And each emotion and each thought is just a layer leading down to the heart issues. You get down to the heart issues, right? I mean, that's what, in the end, suicide is a heart issue based upon the image of God in man. What hath God wrought? Can the clay say, why hast thou made me thus? There's a misconception of what we are and as the image of God when a Christian commits suicide. And you got to get down to those root issues if you're going to have permanent change. This is when the Bible says that our weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. These strongholds, a stronghold by definition, is a lie that you believe. Right? And that lie that you believe. Now, picture this between two people in a marriage covenant. And there's a lie that you believe. And that lie that is believed, picture a large glass table, and somebody throws a stone and it hits the table and it makes a crack and it makes these fissures that all come out. Right? And that's a stronghold. And then you throw another stone, it hits over here, and that's another lie, and that's a lie. And then the fissures go a long ways through the table. And when they start crossing, that's when the table's starting to get weaker and weaker and weaker. These things are, God depicts them as castles. It's a stronghold of a lie that I believe the devil has somehow implanted in my mind. And that stronghold, a stronghold might be, I'm not smart enough. You know, and it comes from a parent that calls their kids an idiot all the time. And he grew up thinking he was an idiot. I had a friend of mine like this, and he finally went and took a test on his IQ. And he went back to his father's grave and set it on the grave and said, I am not an idiot. And he walked away. And he shut that door on his past. And never forget that. That was Bill Carter. And he shut that door. He said, I don't care what you said, old man, all my life. I am not an idiot, and I just proved it. And I said, amen. What was he doing? He's shutting the door on his past. Why? Because it had built a castle, it had built a stronghold in his life, and that stronghold needed to be torn down so that it could be healed, and God can heal that. And that's what 2 Corinthians 10 is about. It's about now in your marriage, you can build a stronghold in your marriage. It's a lie that's in your marriage, and that stronghold is weakening the marriage, and the fissures or the breaks go out a long ways, and they touch many other ones. And if you get several lies built into your life, well, I tell you, that's when you got to come in and tear them down. And the Word of God is sufficient for that, for the Word of God, right? The weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations, and every high thing, that's knowledge, that exalted itself against the knowledge of God. That's wicked knowledge, exalting itself over God's knowledge. God's tower will tear that one down, right? And bring into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. You see what God is talking about? He's talking about your thought life. What are you thinking, sir, when your wife is saying that to you? Right? And to the wife you say, man, what are you feeling when your husband says that? And with ladies, you generally relate to the emotional plane, men to the intellectual plane. That's how you usually get through men, but it goes each way. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about decoding. What's going on inside the heart? And boy, if you could just stop for a moment and think that, man or woman, about your spouse or about your child or about your grandchild or about any Sunday school class. What's going on in the heart? It's funny listening to our school. We just went through some things, and they brought a lady in for a safety meeting, and what she went through, I mean, 3/4 of what she's teaching is right out of the Bible. You know, and so much of it is about that idea of looking beyond and seeing. It's just phenomenal. What's next, Chuck? It's phenomenal to see. Oh, Communication 101's next. Cool, let's get started. How our heart moves our mouth. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. Do you believe that? It should be red letters because Jesus said that. Right? Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. So we know we can be deceiving intentionally with our mouths, right? But eventually, we can't cover it up, right? Eventually, it's going to come out. What's going to come out of the mouth, or what's in the heart, is eventually going to come out of the mouth, right? It eventually comes. Be careful of that verse. Sometimes can't. The Bible says, beware that you hear not every word of thy servant. For thy thyself, or thy yourself, or something has also cursed your master in your heart. You know, and we know that we don't want to hear what everybody has to say, right, Pastor Kessel? You don't want to hear what everybody says about the pastor, right? All right. God says, don't listen to every word of your servant. You have cursed your boss once in a while too. You know, so we know that there's times that the mouth will speak, and it's not necessarily out of the heart. But eventually, what's in the heart is going to be produced, right? Let's see what's next. We can count on this a lot of ways. When a woman feels unloved, she will instinctively move towards the source of her hurt feelings. And this is obvious, like when two ladies who are good friends and sincere friends for years, and one of them has hurt the feelings of another, when they see each other, the one will she'll beeline to the other one, right? And they'll come right up and we need to talk now, right? And you try that with your husbands, ladies, right? Whoop, we need to talk now, right? And that's men and women do it differently, right? The instinct of a woman is to instinctively. Does that make sense? The instinct is instinctively to move towards the conflict, towards the issue, right? This is how most women resolve conflict between themselves, right? We've got to talk. They move towards the one, and they want an intercourse between the two of them. They move towards, right? Now, you guys, I want you to think about the man that stonewalls, right? And the picture I see in my mind is the guy walking out, to his man cave, and the wife's walking behind him, right? Right? And that's that picture we get, right? And I oftentimes do the ladies kind of thing, right? Because all the guys chuckle because like, that's what we hear, right? And we've now shut down. We've shut down. We're walking away. We're wrong, right? What is she doing? She's doing what she does naturally. She moves towards. Yeah, I don't have a lapel on, Chuck. I wonder how sound's doing online. You think it's okay? Chuck said it's okay, so if you're online and it's not working okay, text Chuck. And so women will move towards. They'll want to resolve the conflict. Now, obviously, they can be very angry at times. They want to wait a minute, just like any human being. But their general manner in which they resolve a conflict will be to close in on the. What's next? And he's checking the sound. Okay. Rarely does she. Very rarely. I'm trying to read what it says. Very rarely does she mean she wants to set a future time. We need to talk. She's not saying we need to talk, next week sometime. We got to get together. What she means when something's happening is she means we need to talk. We need to talk right now, right? If my wife says that to me, we need to talk. I know she's not meaning sometime this week. We need to talk. That means now, right? That means right now. We know that from a lady. Now, guys, we do the same thing sometimes, but this is the way women instinctively do it. What's next, Chuck? Let's do it. Let's talk now. The complaint or the criticism is given as a means to share the hurt she is feeling and shows her sincere desire to feel close once again. Now, men don't grasp this. As a husband, we don't grasp this. When a woman comes close, we need to talk. What you said was really hurtful the other day. Right? There's a complaint, right? And it's also could be taken as criticism of my works or what you did. But to understand, guys, the woman, when she closes in, it's a compliment. It's a sign of her deep feeling for you. See, a woman will close, when she desires that relationship healed, she'll close in to heal that relationship. And I see this with Teresa with my two sons. When she desires, she feels something's wrong, or we did something wrong as a parent, or maybe we're overly critical. She'll close in on that one, right? And we need to talk. We need to do this now, right? And she'll sit down and grab the hands, grab the face, turn it towards you, right? What does she do? It's a compliment to a man. That man don't always feel it this way, because it's not always a gentle approach, right? But as the approach comes, the desire to get close, the desire to close in. So to understand, when me and my wife are not, how can I say this? Are not communicating properly and well, and all is peaceful in the Mills paradise. When things aren't quite as they should be, her desire will be to close in. Right? That's her desire, to close in on me. Right? Now, that's a lot of times the last thing I want, right? But that's what she'll do. A man naturally becomes defensive when somebody closes in, especially if he perceives it as an attack. And this is where the danger comes, right? Danger close. Well, who is that? Robinson. Will Robinson, right? There's the computer that would say that, right? What'd she say? Danger, Will. That's going back a long ways. That's going back. That's back when you were. Yeah. Danger, Will Robinson. Is that it, right? Yeah, I remember seeing it. Boy, that was bad graphics. Right? And that's what a man feels, right? He's hearing that computer voice, danger, Dan Mills, because here she comes. All right? And if she approaches a little bit wrong, let's say her facial expression's not good, her tone's not good, or the words aren't pleasant, what happens, right? Right? Danger close, defense, right? We don't, obviously I would never do that, but I might verbally do that. And that's what we watch out for, is that verbally doing that. What's next? But the negative criticisms can quickly overwhelm the husband's vocal ability. Now, this is not an insult to you guys. Many guys are very well spoken. Many of us aren't, especially when it comes to verbal, what do you say, vocabulary and ability to or skillfully tear somebody down. Women are much better at it than a lot of guys, right? Women are oftentimes much better at vocaling what they feel. That's why some women preachers they're excellent at what they can do, because their ability to vocalize their feelings and put them into what do you want to say, means of communicating that feeling to another. Sometimes I read my wife's sermons when she would do the ladies' meetings, and I'd go through her notes, and I said, man, that's good. I think it was Mrs. Scott, but I can't remember if it was her or it might have been Paul Chappell's wife. But one of those ladies wrote a book, and in that book there was a chapter on Jeremiah 17. And man, oh man, did she do a good job. I didn't tell anybody when I preached out of it that I got it from her, but actually I did. But man, could she vocalize and put into words the explicit feeling of what's there. Is well beyond my capability. Oftentimes women are much more able vocally. And as that happens, they can shut down. They can shut down their husband, right? I told you about my friend Richie, right? I haven't talked to Richie in years. But Richie Spencer was one of the smartest guys I know, but he wasn't fast. He would not win a verbal argument, ever. But he was really smart, right? So what would he do? He'd stand up and punch you. It was so cool. Richie would sit there, the guys, they start arguing, and pretty soon he just, he'd fumble over his words, he'd just stand up and punch you. Which was kind of cool. I like Richie. And he did that to me. So that's, when a man becomes overwhelmed very quickly, the speed by which this happens, right? Well, what were you thinking? A woman can ask her husband 12 questions before he gets a single answer. Right? And by then, he's completely overwhelmed with questions, right? And he's trying to work on the first one. Well, what were you doing? He doesn't know what he was doing, right? I stand there with the refrigerator open. My wife says, what are you doing? Well, I know what she's feeling, right? That there's an element here of an unloving act as a result of what she had just made for me. And she thinks that what I am doing is indicating that what she has done is not sufficient. I'm just, my brain's off. I'm just looking at the fridge. Been doing this since I was 12, right? What do you do when you walk in the kitchen? You open the fridge. What are you looking for? Nothing. Are you hungry? No. Then why do you have the refrigerator open? Oh, I just want to see what's in here, I guess. See if the light still works, And I mean, that's what I do, and it's like, then I look in the cupboards, right? And I already know if I want to irritate my wife, how many of you guys, can you just open the cupboard and slam it? To-do. Then I take the drawer, and she's in the other room, she just goes berserk, right? And that's what I do. And the little horns come out. And, but how do we get there? A husband can, his vocal ability, right? He has little respect for what he would view as disrespect, right? Little stomach for what he views as disrespect. And as this comes out, he will. This is where he starts to have struggling. Now, guys, just because your wife is doing wrong, 2 wrongs don't make a right. I know we've taught this since we were little, right? Well, if she would just respect me, right? And that is the last thing you ever want to do, is give your heart's ability to do right before God and take that power and put it in somebody else's hand. Why would you put your power of your life and place it in somebody else's hand? Now your ability to serve God and do right is up to them. That's like somebody says, well, I'd be happy if it wasn't for them. You put your happiness in somebody else's hand? Are you crazy? Yeah, good girl. That's right. You never put your happiness, never give away your power. This is what the world's trying to do, right? You have ADD, take this pill because you can't control yourselves. Now the kid forgets his pill. He says, I can't control myself. I say, oh yeah, watch this, right? What's he need? His shock collar. If you have true ADD, the shock collar will make no difference. You can't control yourself. But if I can put a shock collar on you and you can, guess what I just proved? You can. You just need motive. Right? See, what the doctors did is they took away your power of self-control. And you handed your power of controlling yourself to a pill. But now without that pill, you have no power because you handed it away. You thought you were getting free by making excuses, but you found that the excuses became your prison. So don't you be making excuses for your bad behavior. Stop telling me you're too busy to read your Bible. Stop telling me you're too busy to pray. Stop telling me you don't have what it takes to be a Christian. Stop telling me you can't get up in the morning and come to Bible study. Stop telling me you can't make it to church. Stop making excuses. You're giving your life away. And the minute you give your life away, you lose all your strength. God's the one that comes and holds you responsible for every one of your actions. Jesus said, is there not 12 hours in a day? How come they can do it and you can't? And you're just going, I'm lazy? Guess it's there. No, confess it and come to me and I'll strengthen you. You see, and that's the whole idea. Confession, an excuse can never be brought up in confession. Because if it's a real excuse, then it's not your fault. And therefore, you are not responsible. And therefore, you do not have to confess it. And that's excuses stop all confession. Right? And that's just it. This is what happens. So anyway, how do we get on that? That's all other stuff. Let's go to the next one. Gentlemen, just because she does wrong doesn't mean you can do wrong. Right? She has erred in her approach. Okay, let's say she has. She often desires him to change and feels that it is her responsibility to help him. Right? This is a struggle. Every honest wife, and we don't have that many wives here. We have a few wives here. No, it's her responsibility to fix her husband. Right? This morning, it hit me. Where were we? I can't remember where we were. We were on our way to church this morning, and I think we were in church. Or just about, we were sitting in the parking lot over at Farmersville, and we're sitting there talking. We were the first ones there besides Doug. And my wife reaches over and picks something off my face somewhere. You know, it's probably a piece of lint or something. Who knows what it was, right? Stuck to my hair or my face or my jacket. I don't know if I've ever done that to her. You know? I mean, when I'm looking at her, I'm not thinking, let's see, is there anything I can correct here? And, there's a little, what's that? And, right? But they do it to us all the time. Why? It's her responsibility. Right? But her desire is for her husband. Never forget what happened there in the garden. And your desire shall be to your husband, and he shall rule over thee. What does that mean? Right? And the idea there is that the men, we rule over her spirit. And her desire is to see her husband shine. She doesn't want me to go up there and start preaching, with my fly down. Right? And an hour later, I sit down and say, what do you think of the message, honey? She's like, man, you made a fool of. She doesn't want to see me look like a fool. She doesn't want to see me, my tie's crooked, it's up over here, my glasses are crooked, and she'll do her best to try. And really, her heart is for me, but I don't always feel that when she's picking stuff off, She's, leave me alone, right? Could it be her approach? So often, she feels the responsibility for her husband. And does this happen to our daughters too? You should see, especially Stephanie. Now, Brittany being the oldest child, she had the oldest child syndrome. You all know oldest kids are messed up. Any oldest children here? Oh, man, look, no wonder your church is all messed up, Kessel. Oldest children, right? Basically somewhat OCD, very good at responsibility, always talk early and walk early, but are generally less happy. Very, very particular. They usually have better grades, but they're not really very happy, right? And any babies? Baby of the family? Yeah. Okay. The baby of the family, right? That's the happy-go-lucky. That's the one that's generally the happiest, but best, most well adjusted. But they usually accomplish the least in their life, right? They're not the 4.0 student all the time. They're not the one that is always taking the responsibility. They're not the achievers in life. Generally, but they're the happier ones, right? And that's generally, if you look in the Bible, by the way, follow first child and last child and middle child, you'll find all the syndromes in the Bible. Every one of them is there. Find the middle child; they're always messed up. Middle children, right? Middle children are messed. It's like, amen, right? And her desire is to her husband, and our daughters, we could see that displaying in their brothers. And to watch Stephanie mother Matthew and Eli was tremendous. Brittany did, but we heard about how mean Brittany was after we would leave the house. Ooh, she was a dictator. Amen. And but Stephanie didn't have that first child responsibility syndrome. She just had the mothering syndrome, right? And she just would mother, especially Eli. She'd mother him to death. And why? She was always helping him, always, right? It was her responsibility. And if it didn't go right, well, it's partially her fault, right? This is how women feel towards their husbands so often. My daughters would get a little bit this towards me also, which is kind of cool as you start to recognize what they're doing, right? Women have a great danger in mothering their husbands, right? You really see this when babies are born, right? The first baby, well, watch Matthew and Andrea, right? They got their first baby, right? Naturally, she's a mom. Naturally, he's a moron. I mean, right? Yeah. You take that baby, you hand it to him, and he's like, no, what side's up, And, right, Matthew is okay. But that's because you prepared Matthew, right? But still, you watch him, and he's not like she is, And the danger is when children come along, and moms are natural instructors. They're always instructing the kids. They start instructing them from the womb, and they start instructing that child all their life. And then dad comes along, and he can't change a diaper, and he can't do this or that, and he comes in and starts to do these things, and he's helping out mom, and she's very appreciative of it, what's happening, but she'll instruct him on some proper manners, right? And you do have to wipe the baby's bottom before you put the new diaper on, and things like that. Well, she begins to instruct, right? And the danger is she can go into the instruction. Now, a man who's wise, right, will rely heavily on his wife's help, right? My wife has insight into things that I don't. That's why I oftentimes have to ask my wife, well, how did it go? Did it make any sense? Did it work out? Why? Because she has an insight that I don't have. And I trust her on a lot. Is she always right? No. And we're going to get to how to give advice to your husbands, ladies. Anybody know how to do it? What's the secret? What'd you say? Don't. No, that's not it. What's the secret to advice? Do you remember, babe? Respectfully, yes. And how is that interpreted? If you ask, sometimes you're not the teacher unless a teacher or something, that you become somebody's instructor by volunteer. Volunteer. That's the only true instruction you'll ever have is when it's a volunteer instruction. They want you to teach them. But there's another way too, right? Is you can take my advice, you can take all of it, you can take some of it, or you can take none of it. And it's all fine. But here's my advice. That's the proper way to give advice. That works with almost anybody, but especially in a marriage, right? If you're advising your husband, he can take it, he can take some of it, or he can take none of it, and all of it's fine. And if you approach it, my wife's like, no. And if you approach it in that way, they'll receive the advice. Right? Yeah, but what if they don't take it? I see the problem. Okay. All right. She is trying to help you guys. What's next, Chuck? Women envision themselves in the light of their relationships. We understand that, right? Their self-image is dependent upon their view of their relationships. And this is important. Now, we all do it to a point, of course. But women are more dominant in this area, right? A troubled relationship. This is the difference between a dad and a mom when they have a rebellious child. and what it does to them, right? And one of the ladies, it's self-image, especially in our relationship. When there's problems between me and my wife, there's a major problem with her self-image. When there's a problem between me and my job, there's a problem with my self-image. Right? This is something my wife is worried about. She mentions it several times here over the last month. As I step out of the pastorate, it's very likely that I will go into a self-image crisis. As I lose my self-image, I lose that self. How do you view yourself? I view it in a relationship to my job. This is why a lousy sermon affects me a lot. Right? You performed bad at your job. All right, a bad performance review at work can really affect a man. All right, when he's well respected at work, this is how we relate to. You ask a man who he is, right? He's probably not going to say a husband. It's probably not his first identifier. Right? You say, well, who are you? And well, I'm a roto-rooter man. I'm a plumber. Usually he'll try to make something look a little better. I'm a transportation specialist. Bus driver. Okay. Women envision themselves in light of their relationships. Now I got to remember this, right? Her self-image is at stake. So there's my wife, right? Our relationship's been a little rocky here. Something's come into our relationship and it's caused a problem. And what is she going to do? As she closes in on me, right? She's concerned, she's worried, and her self-image is at stake. So how's her face look? Right? Is she coming to kill me? Is she coming to help me? Is she coming to? And this is where the panic sets in, right? You look over, your wife's got her eye on you, and she's like, "What did I do?" Right? It's a pink slip down to the office. The same thing can happen with your daughters, right? The relationship, the father-daughter relationship, is critical. That's why deadbeat dads is such a problem in the world today, right? Where we have so many homes where there is no father. We have so many homes where the mom's trying to be a father, with two moms. You have so many problems with, and now you got that daughter-father, which is supposed to be such a special relationship, right? There's so special between father and daughter, and obviously between mother and son. There's that special bond there. And you see it, that's why you don't have a mother-daughter dance usually at the wedding, right? It's a father-daughter. And it's a special relationship that takes place in that thing. And that is very necessary, but it's also, with my daughter, she's establishing her self-image on this. All right? And we know we're supposed to establish our self-image on what God has to say, right? God says, I'm his child. That's my image. I'm made in God's image. I'm a free will creature. I have decisions to make that I can make. I'm a moral agent. I know what God has created. But we also realize that God has given us relationships to aid us. And women are going to establish their self-image on this relationship. Men are going to do it upon their work. And it's very impactful to a man when he can't fix something. Right? It's very impactful for a man if his patient dies. And it's something, he thinks he could have prevented. It's very, very impactful. Now, it can impact, these aren't 100%. Obviously, they cross. What's next, Chuck? The key relationship, and therefore the key to self-image, is the marital relationship. Now, this might seem common sense, right? God, spouse. The number 2 relationship in your life. The number 2 most important decision in your life. Who do you marry? Right? Number 1, are you saved? Number 2, are you married? Right? Right. You can be saved and on your way to heaven and live pretty miserable, right? Why? Because you married the wrong one, right? Especially for girls, because guys are such deceiving, rotten, nasty pigs, right? They'll come to church and read their Bible and act spiritual until they get married. And I've seen this over and over. It's amazing what a guy will do to get a girl. He's Mr. Christian until the marriage day, right? Whatever he was before you met him, ladies, that's what he's going to be 2 years after you're married. If he wasn't a good Christian and serving the Lord and doing things 2 years before he met you, 2 years after you're married, that's what he's going to be. He will go back to what he was, right? Right? He will. Yes. Can a leper change his spots? So are you who are accustomed to do evil. All right, and he'll become super Christian to get the girl. It's funny because girls are usually the other way around. They actually do become Christian to get the guy, which is kind of surprising, right? The key relationship, and therefore the key to their self-image, is the marital relationship. Understand the importance. God said to the husband, "You shall rule over her." Now he said that to the woman. He shall rule over thee, and your spirit will be towards him. Now what responsibility does that put upon the husband? If your wife's image of herself is dependent upon you, how much responsibility is God putting on you? Right? And that, they say, ladies, you shouldn't do that, right? Put your image, get your self-image from God. Well, sometimes you'll have to do that. But God has given you a husband for an aid in that. And we aren't always very good at it, are we, guys? Right? Let a fight go on a lot longer than we should. And we know what God is saying. Say you're sorry. No, she's wrong. I'm not asking her to say. I'm asking you to say, right? And if she does it, I'll do it. Oh, so you're giving away your responsibility again. What's next, right? The marital relationship is a topic of ongoing discussion between women. As ladies talk to each other, especially with their friends, they go out, they report to each other the progress of their marriage. If I ask Chuck how things are going, he's not going to tell me usually between him and Barb, right? But when ladies get together, how things are going, they're talking about relationships. So me and Chuck are talking about whether his truck runs, right? And of course his truck runs, right? It's a new truck. That's not new. It's new to me. They report to each other progress, right? Good friends, and ladies will do this. Our girls do this when they talk with their mom. And there's a talk about the marital relationship, right? It's rare. That I get into it maybe a little more than others, but even me and brother Pastor Kessler, we won't be talking about our marital relationships when we meet each other, right? What'd you kill? What's next? And if he says Sharon, I'll be like, oh, let's talk about our marriage, right? The typical response of the husband is to stonewall in some manner or another. This usually results in intensifying of the wife's attempt to reconcile, right? Now come here, sweetheart, and yeah, who else do you think of calling sweetheart? And don't answer that. If you would have came running up here, Elliot, that would have been awesome. Okay, that would have been the perfect time. So you got that image, right? So come on up here. Right? Give me that mean look you get. Oh, that's not really mean. It's kind of cute, actually. So picture, there's something happening here, and it's not going well, right? It's just a little tat, It happens between marriages all the time, I just slammed 3 cupboard, drawers, and I'm not doing it on purpose to irritate her. She thinks I am, right? And she'll say, "What are you doing? What are you looking for?" And I'll be like, "Why is it not here?" And off the crazy cycle wants to start, right? She wants to say something, so she'll step up to me, right? My instinct is to flee, right? That's my instinct. So let's say we start going back and forth, right? She says something, and it quickly overwhelms my vocabulary, right? I'm standing at the fridge, what are you doing? You're not hungry. Right? And getting it overwhelmed. My instinct is to close the fridge and go away from her, right? That's my instinct, is to move away. Her instinct is to close. So what's the vision, right? Follow me. Is this, right? And that's the image, right? She's trying to close. She's trying to close, and I'm trying. So when I turn away, her instinct is to come closer, right? Here's what we watch out for, guys. Here's when you're in trouble, when she stonewalls. A woman that stonewalls is a woman that's lost hope. When she turns and walks away, she's lost hope. Well, you didn't have to do it so decisively. Thanks, sweetheart. You can sit. And that image, that image of walking away. Now, she might not be chasing you out to the garage, guys, but let me tell you, her heart is. And the same thing with your daughters, and your granddaughters, right? Especially when it's a close relationship. When you move away, now, grandkid daughters, they can't do anything wrong. We're never going to stonewall them until they get mouthy. And So as you turn away to do the honorable thing, to not make it worse, you're intensifying her desire to close. Right? Because her desire is to close in, and generally you'll see that manifested physically. Even if it's not manifested physically, it is being manifested in the realm of her emotions. You know that. So her desire is to close, and you're moving away. Which does what? Intensifies her desire to close. And to understand what happened, right? To reconcile, they close. They close in on it. This isn't how men do it, right? If me and one of you guys aren't getting along too good and we have a little tat on the volleyball court, right, and you're on crutches, and be nice to me next time, it won't happen. And like anybody believe that? Justin standing there, yeah, I didn't hurt him. So let's say me and Justin do have something that comes between us, right? And so we got little words or something. We don't close to make up, right? What do? We just ignore each other a little bit, and finally I'm like, how's things going, man? He's like, yeah, it's all right. Car running good? Yeah. New car's doing good. And then what are we doing? We're making up, right? We're not looking at each other. We're not closing. He might be, a mile and a half away, walkie-talkie. But, men make up differently than ladies, right? And this is what we'll see. We got to understand is we're decoding the message. She's not attacking you, right? With knives in her hands. That's what men see, all right? This is where she's closing in. This is where, ladies, you got to be careful with your tone and with your facial expression and with your words as you're closing in, right? You do that all the time. What'd you hear? I do not. Well, what did he hear, right? It's a lie, isn't it? Does he do it all the time? No. No, he doesn't. When you hear a superlative, what is it? It's an emotional response. You always do that. Every single time you walk through that door. That's not true. He doesn't do it every time he comes through the door, right? It's just he does it often. And what she means. But what is she doing, right? She's using a superlative, which indicates an emotional response, right? And she's coming towards me with every single time. And I'm just like, right? That's the response, right? Or defense. And watch out for the defense response. But if I move away, she's going to intensify it. He's not deciphering. That's all right. What? Did you skip one? There you go. He's not deciphering the code. She's saying, I need your love. He hears, you don't respect me, right? As she comes closer with a criticism, she comes closer with crying, she comes closer with a complaint, and she's moving in. Her desire is reconciliation. And as she's coming closer and closing in, right, he's hearing a disrespect, and a defense mechanism comes in, and he's moving away. As he moves away, he's screaming, I don't love you. There's no greater way to tell a woman you don't love her than to move away from her. That is the greatest way to tell a woman you don't love her, is to move away. Right? Especially when there's conflict. Right? So he's getting this disrespect message. And go ahead with the next, Chuck. And when she's too negative, she is doing herself and her marriage no favors. When a woman is coming out, listen, we're not going to say the hurt is illegitimate. He may have drop kicked your heart just now. Yes, right? He comes home 45 minutes late, and there was something special planned that night, and he knew all about it. You reminded him twice, and now he just shows up, and he walks through the door, and as soon as he sees you, he goes, oh. Right? He forgot again. What happens? Right? How is she interpreting your forgetfulness? No love. That's how she will interpret that, right? And what's happening is a heart issue. It's happening in her heart, and it's being interpreted as a lack of love. It's an unloving action. Is it an unloving action? Yes. Did he do it because he doesn't love her? No. She's like, yes, he did. No, he didn't. Shut up, woman. And unloving action. And but if she comes across too negative, too complaining, too powerful, too strong, too quickly approaching. Her heart might be right. He needs to remember things. He needs to remember important things. Now, what really happens is when I forgot about something that was important to her kids. At that moment, they were her kids, right? And now she's afraid I just broke Stephanie's heart, or I just broke Matthew's heart, or and she's worried about her kids. Now, not only is she upset, but Mama Bear's there, and Mama Bear's tough. And are they correct in my actions? Were poor? Yes. Is it because I don't love my kids or love her? Of course not. But it's a hurt to the heart, and then there's a fear of a hurt to another heart. Especially a heart that she loves and cares for. And do you know what you've done? Do you know the actions you take? Do you know what's going on? And here she comes. Right? What's my reaction? It depends on my interpretation of the event. Right? Now we know what the things are going to get away, right? Guilt. Right? I know what I just did because as soon as I opened the door, I went, oh! They're all dressed up for the party. The party started 20 minutes ago, and we're not there. Because I'm late, because I forgot and I was talking to somebody at the garage. What do I do? All right, what do I do at that moment? Understand, if you come at it too negative, ladies, you're not doing yourself any favors. We know what the desire is, that he would stop being late. You know it's a good thing for him to remember important events that involve the family, and for him to be on time for those events, and to fulfill the promise that he made to his kids. Those are good things that a husband should do. And the wife, she knows she's the helpmeet. She knows it's her place to assist him in that. That's why God created her. And now she has failed also. And she's coming to him. So in that scenario, if she's too negative, she's not doing herself or her marriage any favors. You say, well, he just has to know how I feel. Oh, don't worry, he knows. Right? The old verse comes in, be angry, but sin not. God said, wives, see that you reverence your husbands. Just because he's late doesn't mean you can throw God's word in the trash can. Be angry, but sin not. You say, but I can't help it. It's my emotions have taken over. I get it. I've broken a lot of stuff because of my emotions, and later had to go back and glue it back together again, right? Right? But it's not going to gain, your desire is not going to be accomplished. You're not helping him or helping the marriage if you shut him down. Right? It's not going to help, right? If you chase him out of the house and he goes out to the garage and doesn't come back in till 11 and then goes straight to bed, then gets up in the morning and leaves and doesn't talk to you, what have you gained, right? Well, he knows I was upset. Well, yeah, but was that the goal? What's your goal? That he'd start remembering. Well, if I don't feed him for a month, he'll start remembering. Well, okay, maybe. Watch out, right? That the overly negative, right? The goal is to help. The goal is to see him do better. The goal is to raise him to a higher standard. That's the goal, right? How can it be achieved? Is he happy with himself that he forgot? Is he pleased? He shut the work box and he got home, opened up the house box and went, ah! Right? What happened? How can we fix this? How can we arrange it? We understand. She is interpreting this in one way, and it has hurt her heart. There's a heart issue involved in this, right? And it's that love issue, right? Sometimes you just want to get even. Oh yeah, you hurt me? I'm going to hurt you, right? Revenge is mine, saith the Lord, I will repay. If you repay yourself, then God won't. That's the principle there. If you take care of it, then God won't. As Brother Fusco said, ladies, duck and let God hit them. Right? If God does the work, it'll affect a permanent change. If you do the work, it'll be temporary and in your presence only. And that's the key. What's next? Well, just about done. Proverbs 21:19. It is better to dwell in the wilderness than in a contentious and angry woman. Kessel, don't say amen. That's you're close. I knew it, right? And he, Brother Vinka, these guys. You're a hunter too, aren't you, Justin? Not this year though. No, you shoot a deer. What are you going to do, right? You got to give the deer crutches now, so you both of you can get out of the woods, right? So, sorry, brother. So you like the woods, you like to be out there. This has nothing to do with what this verse is talking about, right? A wilderness in the Bible indicates the place of devils and abandonment and emptiness. That's the wilderness. Jesus went out into the wilderness to be attacked of the devil. What's God saying about a contentious and angry woman? You're better off with the devil. Yeah. Yeah. She's an amen choir, right? What's the idea here, right? The Bible also, I think the next one a verse also about the continual dropping? And we know this one. It's better to dwell in the corner of a housetop than with a brawling woman in a wide house. The depiction is a very small, tight space and very little than it is to be in a big, wide space, but with a woman that's brawling, right? And God here is indication. We know this is in Proverbs. These are indications to a husband. In my Bible, next to these verses, says, so keep her happy. Right? Happy wife, happy life, right? And that's the man's side of this. To the woman's side of this is she should be saying, I'm not going to be a contentious woman and I'm not going to be a brawler. Right? What's a brawler? Right. Ready to fight and ready to argue. Right? Ready to fight and ready to argue. One of the dangers that's going to come is what's the fear of a woman's heart. And one of the fears is the doormat fear. Right? Women are afraid if they follow God, they're going to become a doormat. And it's never the truth. Never the truth, right? Your husband, if he's an honest and good-willed man, does not desire a doormat. That's not what he wants. Matter of fact, if you want to watch a man exalt a woman, watch a woman who respects him. He will always exalt her. Right? You get a woman that admires a man and exalts that man and she respects that man, he will defend her to his death. And that's what happens, right? What's next, Chuck? Is there another one? Oh, there's another one. Doesn't it say a contentious woman's like a continual dropping? Isn't there another verse? What's that? Not for a while. Okay, and you ever hear a drip, 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 drip? And I always think of Chinese torture. Yeah, dripping on your forehead. Mothers have a hard time not scolding their husbands, right? Scolding is always to be understood as disrespect. We scold our children at times, right? And we all know what a good old scolding is, right? That this is not a wife's place to scold her husband, right? And when you're thinking of respect, you go to the obvious areas, right? You're standing in front of you is a police officer. Are you going to scold him, right? Right. Now, probably when you're over 80, you might be able to get away with scolding a young police officer, okay? And they'll take it, well, it's from a grandma. But mothers have a hard time not scolding their husbands. Scolding will always be understood as disrespect. Always, right? So watch out not to give a good scolding. What's next, Chuck? And but mothers get into that groove, right, where they're scolding their children, then the husband walks in and he did the same thing that her son just did. Right? Her son walks in, you can see the trail through the kitchen. Right? There's jelly on the floor. There's peanut butter on a knife stuck to the countertop. There's some crumbs and bread and stuff. The loaves left open. He had peanut butter and jelly, didn't he? And he left the trail through the house, right? She cleans it all up. She scolds her son about making a mess, and you need to clean it up. And it should look like it was before you started. Put the jelly away, put that away, wipe off the counter, give the knife to the dog to lick off. Right? Take care of things. Then the husband walks in and does exactly the same thing. Well, then you know where the son got it from, right? What is she to do? Get out in that kitchen and clean up that jelly and put the peanut butter away, close the bread, wipe off the counter, Get out there. No, that's not your place, right? The scolding is not to come to the husband, right? Why? Because that marriage is important. That relationship is important, right? And not that the relationship with your son isn't, but if there's a difference between mom and son and husband and wife. And that can easily be crossed. And it crosses a lot easier when the kids are home, you know? And that's something to watch out for, right? If you ask, well, what do you want your coworkers to love you or to respect you? Most men will laugh, right? And say, I could care less if they love me. I want to work in an environment where I'm respected. Respected for my strengths, respected for my intelligence, respected for my skill. I want to be in a place where I'm respected, right? I don't care if everybody at the garage loves me, right? I want them to respect me. You know, the same thing happens in the pulpit, right? It is really funny how often the church members, we know, and I understand that most of the cards that would come to the pastor were bought and purchased and signed by the wife. Okay, I get it, all right? And I can tell by the handwriting, guys, you didn't write this card, you know? And I understand that, you know? But you do get a lot of love from your church to the pastor. That's how you know it came from the ladies. Right? Well, let me ask you, ladies, what does your pastor desire? Would I rather be in a church where I was highly respected, or would I be in a church where I'm highly loved? If I had to choose between the two, which one do you think I'd like? Which one would I rather pastor? Right? You normally wouldn't have to make, it's a hypothetical situation to make that choice. Obviously, there's overlap. But if you had to make the choice, which one would you like, Pastor? Yeah. Right. And that's where the man lives, right? And to understand that. Now, what's next? And it's not that we could care less if they love us. Of course, we have, there's a percentage of us that wants love. Men do not stay at a job where they're not respected, regardless of the pay or the benefits. I've seen this so many times. Oh, it makes me sick. And the guy starts feeling disrespect to the job. And he gives up a job that has incredible future, great pay and benefits. I'm like, you can't, but you just see it. I can't stay. And this is where you got to watch out for those jobs where all the, especially, and I hate to pick on union jobs, where all the people with the up and up union jobs are all picking on the newbies, right? And that young guy comes in, and there's nobody there to pay him some respect. And sometimes you get this clique of the long-term guys there. They're pretty brutal to the young ones. This is in machine shops. This happens. There's a machinist quite often, and that you need one guy that steps in, right? That'll step in and take that young man and say, "Hey, you're doing all right. We're glad you're here. Let me show you a little something, and go get a grid square." And they do that in the Army, right? And so to understand that, even a young man has to be in an area of respect, right? And he can give up a job with a great career future because there's no respect, right? And if you watch the military, when somebody graduates from basic training, they're just getting out of basic training, but man, you're now a Marine. You've earned the right to be called a Marine. Boy, I tell you what, that old chest comes out, right? That boy, he comes back a jughead. He's ready to take on the world, And you're like, okay, now you got to go off to school and learn something, okay? And what's next? They do it so well. Our military does it so well. Men interpret their world through a grid of respect, a respect grid. It will determine how much they enjoy an event or the people around them. I will determine my enjoyment of something through a respect grid. That is the determining factor. Now, there's other things that I enjoy and stuff, and it doesn't always come into play. I'm in an amusement park. I don't have to have respect. But I tell you what, you get somebody to disrespect me. There's a young man that did that one time. And he was working at a gas station, and he had insulted my wife. I was just a young man, and I was out trying to put gas in the car, and my wife comes out of the gas station in tears. We were on a trip. So I walked in, and there's this young punk behind the counter, right? Well, he proceeds to disrespect me. And I asked him who his boss was, and he says, I'm not telling you. I asked him his name. He said, I'm not telling you. Well, I proceeded to pick him up over the counter and throw him on the floor. Now, that's illegal, and the police were called. And it was an interesting afternoon in our trip. But what happened, right? He learned what happens when you disrespect a man. Right? And that's something that young boys in our school buses need to learn, and we've had to teach a few of them. You know, I remember saying it to a young man as I stepped up to the back of the bus, and I said, "You realize you're talking to a man, and you're not always going to be on this school bus. Are you sure you want to meet me off of this school bus? Are you going to say those words to me?" And he decided he wasn't going to say those words to me and apologized. Why? Because there's a respect grid, right? We will die before we lose it. Right? And that's how a man operates. And if we can understand, this is how I determine a good day and a bad day. This is how I determine a good movie and a bad movie, a good event and a bad event. I read my world through a grid of respect. Right? And we don't always determine the respect by the same things, right? It can deal with, guys with their physical ability, their looks. It can deal with, am I respected in the area that I'm attempting to achieve respect in? Right? And you say, well, that borderlines on pride. It does. This is why men, I think, they're not more susceptible to pride, but it manifests itself differently in men than it does women. Women have a tendency, from what I can see, to be more self-destructive in their pride. Pride in a woman is very destructive to herself. Or men, in their pride, I mean, it still tears down the heart because it's an evil sin, but it manifests itself in different ways. Let's just say it that way. One more slide, we're done for the night. Right, what was that? That's the segue. Anybody know what a segue is? Can you spell segue? Nope, that's a different kind of Segway. That's one that you ride.
Oh, that's the one.
That's the one that you ride, right? It wasn't Mall Cop on a Segway, or right? Yeah, that's Mall Cop's on a Segway, right? Segway, right? This is Segue, EU, right? Was it? It's Segway. I just looked it up. Last week, right? So Segue, I think is how you spell it. It's a segue, right? That's a change in thought, right? And that's a logical fallacy. When somebody does a segue, that means that they have two different thoughts and they're doing an argument, and like their third point is a segue. It doesn't line up, and it's a different idea. So anyway, thank you, Chuck, for giving us a segue. We all know what that is. Spouse, work, in-laws, children, friends, church. What is that about, Chuck? What's the next slide say? Okay, now we're still on the same idea there. So let's go back one. This is the idea of a respect grid from your spouse, respect from work, respect from in-laws. Why is there so much struggle between mother-in-law? What are mother-in-laws so good at? Disrespect. From our children, what do dads have trouble with teenage daughters? Right? If they get into lack of respect, right? Or even their sons. Your friends. Who do I choose? How do I choose my friends? Who's not my friends? Right? How's Pastor Kessel as he steps into the pulpit? What's he going to do to win the men of the church? Right? He's going to respect them in a way in which they desire respect. Watch what a man does, determine what he does and how he determines his own self-respect and how he gets it, and then honor him for it. You'll find out when you honor a man for something that's not his self-respect area, it doesn't do much. But when you honor him in his area, right? And that's something that's something you learn, right? So what church do I want to go to as a man? A church that'll respect me as a man. Or a church that has functions for men that show a respect for men, right? If we have a dress contest, probably us men aren't going to feel very respected, right? And so, although seeing Pat in a dress would be interesting. He can't hear me. Hold your breath, right? So anyway, these areas right here, if you're looking, the number one is my spouse. I need respect from Teresa. For my work, I need respect from my church and from the bus garage. For my in-laws, both my in-laws have passed away. Teresa's lost both her parents, so I'm doing okay there. From my children, even though they're adult children, right? And from their spouses. And from my friends. Who do I'm going to determine who's my friend? How do you end a friendship with a man? Disrespect him. Stay in that area of disrespect. Don't show them any respect. And I was going to give an example, but I won't give it. I know better. And the same was at church. So anyway, those areas a man is where men need respect. All right, and it's not. I think an earlier slide it says when a woman shows respect to a man, she's touching a special chord in his innermost being. And that's something, and it draws out of him an automatic response of love, an automatic response of cherish, an automatic response of protect and provide. It's automatic. He doesn't have to think. He doesn't have to. It's automatic when she touches that chord inside his heart of admiration. That's a good way of respect, right? And just all you got to do is watch the young couples, right? Just watch them. And Robin and Andy's been our favorite to watch here lately, right? And to watch Robin hanging on Andy's every word and watching him. And she would say things when they were courting, right? And about when Andy would go over to her house and get some work done. And she just amazed by how fast he gets it done and all he can do. It's just, he's amazing. Now, if you know anything about Andy, he is amazing, right? But that's Andy's area of specialty, right? His ability to achieve and to work and to get those things done. We all know he's amazing among men in what he can do. But what happened in his heart when he heard her say it? Well, man, she ain't so bad after all, is she? Right? Kind of nice girl. Maybe I'd take another look at her, right? And how did she win Andy's heart, right? I mean, he was the greatest thing since sliced bread. She was talking to everybody about it, right? He was amazing, right? And what happened? He goes over, and Andy suddenly turned into this mushy, wishy-washy kind of, kind of guy, And that's what us guys think, right? So, ladies, if you wanted your husband to act like Andy does right now, how would you do it? It wouldn't be hard, would it? It wouldn't be hard. There was once upon a time, when there was a little girl named Teresa who hung on my every word. She was amazed by my Bible knowledge. We'd sit at Perkins for hours, and I'd draw pictures, and you all know how my famous pictures. And I'd draw, the tribulation and eschatology and the rapture and when it's coming and the 1,000-year reign. And I drew it all out for her, and she was just stunned and amazed, And I tell you what, I did anything for that girl. Anything, right? It was us against the world, and her parents tried to break us up. My parents tried to break us up, and my grandmother wrote me a letter warning me about her. Boy, was she wise. And I mean, it was a rocky road for a few years there, right? But what happened? I would do anything for that girl. I'd give up my career. I'd give up my parents. I'd give up my love. Why? What did she struck in that young man's heart that he would do anything? Could she do it again today? Yes. Why? Because the process is still the same. How do you win a man? And that's the process. And it's absolutely powerful, life-changing. So let's pray. Let's call it a night. Father in heaven, thank you, Lord, for Communication 101, God. And I know this is all going to be held against me in the court of law when I get home. Thank you for it, Lord. I need reminded and what it is to be a good husband, especially in the presence of God. Lord, I'm going to stand and give an account to you for this girl you gave me and what I've done to your daughter over the last 26, 27, however long it's been, Lord, and for the next 25. So, Father, I pray that the day that all of us stand and give an account of what kind of a husband was I, what kind of a father was I, Lord, I might give that account with joy. And as you ask my wife, and you will, how was he? And she has to give an account for me. As heirs together, the grace of life, that she might do it with joy. And as she rejoices and tells about her husband and that he was a good man and loved her. So Lord, I pray for that. I pray you'd increase us in grace and give us wisdom and knowledge to know how to decode. Help us, Lord, to understand our own encoding process. Thank you for the reminder. Bless us tonight as we go from this place. It's good to be in this place. It's good to be in the presence of God and the presence of friends. Give us wisdom as we walk. In Jesus' name, amen.